Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you a video about the story of Hoai Ca and Hung. The lingering echoes of the previous meeting stayed with Hoai Ca for a long time, like a thin veil of smoke that had yet to fade, quietly covering her deepest thoughts. The small garden in front of the house was as green as ever, vegetable beds neatly tended, flower pots lined up along the path, standing still under the fading afternoon sun. Everything seemed unchanged, yet for Hoai Ca, the familiar space suddenly felt heavier than ever. The confessions and secrets shared during that meeting were like an invisible thread, tightly winding around her mind, making every step and every breath carry caution and contemplation. Tet was drawing very near. The late year chill had begun to slip into every corner of the house, bringing with it the familiar scent of reunion. But for Hoai Ca, this year's Tet was not only about waiting for family meals, warm wishes, or moments gathered around a glowing hearth. It also carried layered thoughts, unnamed knots, and questions that kept repeating in her heart without answers. The closer the year's end approached, the heavier that feeling became, as if time itself were quietly urging her to face what she had been trying to keep hidden. The previous episode closed with Hoai Ca standing quietly in the yard, her hands deftly arranging flower pots that were taking shape. The late afternoon light cast a pale golden hue over her slender figure, warm, yet tinged with melancholy. In that moment, Hoai Ca understood clearly that from the instant she learned of the secret about Hung's mother's long-lost biological son, her once calm life had taken a different turn. She said nothing, revealed no sign, yet silently took on a heavy responsibility, the burden of silence. It was not a cold silence, but one filled with care, hesitation, and fear. Hoai Ca felt deep compassion for her, for the long years of torment and the mistakes of the past she had carried with her. She also understood that some pains, if stirred again, could wound many people. But alongside that empathy was an unceasing worry for Hung and Tieu San. Hoai Ca feared that if the truth were exposed, what they currently had, the peace, the fragile yet precious bond, would be disrupted. She dared not imagine the reactions, the emotions that might erupt once everything was laid bare. That inner tug-of-war kept her from ever feeling at ease. As this episode begins, the story opens with the familiar rhythm of daily life, yet the usual calm seems to have quietly cracked. Everything in the household continues as before, small routines repeated out of habit, but beneath the ordinary surface are subtle emotional shifts in each person. Hung begins to sense a clear change in Hoai Ca, even though he cannot yet name exactly what it is. She remains as diligent as ever, careful in every small task, attentive to Tony, faithful to her daily trips to the garden and the market. And yet, something faint has changed, enough that Hung cannot ignore it. In Hoai Ca's eyes, Hung notices a quiet pensiveness, a deeper stillness than usual. It is not outward exhaustion, but a silent concern, as if she is carrying something very heavy that she cannot speak of. When Hung asks, Hoai Ca merely offers a gentle smile, gives brief answers, and quickly returns to her work. The smile is still kind, still familiar, but Hung senses a subtle avoidance behind it, just enough to deepen his unease. Hoai Ca's silence is not loud, nor does it cause obvious disruptions, yet it alters the atmosphere in the house. Hung often considers asking more directly, but each time he meets her contemplative gaze, he hesitates. He does not want to hurt Hoai Ca inadvertently, nor does he want to pressure her to speak before she is ready. That hesitation stretches the silences between them a little longer each day, even as they remain side by side, sharing daily routines as before. Hoai Ca feels Hung's concern and worry, but she also knows she cannot speak yet. Each time she faces him, a hard-to-name guilt rises within her. She knows Hung is perceptive, that he can sense even the smallest changes, yet she chooses to remain silent, as a way to protect everyone from what cannot yet be foreseen. As the final days of the year quietly pass, that silence continues, flowing from the previous episode into this one, like an invisible thread binding their relationships, waiting for a moment when it can finally be untied. Elsewhere, Hung's mother still could not truly find peace for herself. After finally pouring out the feelings she had buried for so long to Hoai Ca, she did feel a little lighter, like she had just set down a burden that had pressed on her for years. But that relief passed quickly, replaced by a restless anxiety that would not leave her. When night fell and the house grew quiet, old memories came rushing back, clearer than ever. The search for her biological son was still unfinished, without any solid lead, and that decades-old guilt not only refused to fade, it seemed to awaken even more strongly as Tet drew closer day by day. The nearer the year's end approached, the more sharply she felt the emptiness inside. Looking around the familiar house, where Hung and Tieu were, where warm meals and familiar laughter filled the rooms, she felt both gratitude and fear. She longed to make amends to the child she had lost, to atone for the mistakes she had made in the careless, immature days of the past. Yet at the same time, she was terrified that if the truth ever came to light, it would hurt the very people beside her, shatter the relationships she had struggled to protect for so many years. That contradiction kept her mind from ever truly settling. There were nights when she sat for a long time by the window, staring out into the dim yard, seeing old faces and long-buried memories rise up one by one. She asked herself whether she was being selfish, wanting to find her son, yet also wanting to hold on to the peace she had now. The question repeated again and again without an answer, only weighing her heart down further. And within that torment, with no clear way out, she began making quiet, private decisions, silently, carefully, daring to tell no one. She discreetly reconnected with people from her past, old acquaintances and ties she had believed were long broken. She weighed every phone call with extreme caution, keeping her voice measured, asking gently, probing carefully, afraid that even a small slip could expose what she was trying to hide. Sometimes she dared only a few vague questions, other times she spoke less and listened more, as if gathering even one tiny fragment of memory, one small clue, could be enough to stir her heart. The information was scattered and uncertain, yet it was enough to light a fragile spark of hope within her, woven tightly with an ever-growing unease. And within that atmosphere, the episode's rising tension slowly began to form, not loudly, not in an obvious, dramatic way, but quietly seeping into everyday life. Hung, in a completely accidental moment, unexpectedly overheard part of one of his mother's unfinished phone calls. It was not a full conversation, only broken phrases, incomplete words that had not yet been pieced into a complete story. Yet even those vague keywords, a child abroad, and what happened back then, were enough to make him freeze, his heart suddenly sinking for a brief moment. He did not understand the full story, nor did he know what truth lay behind those words. But the instincts of a son, sharp and undeniable, would not let him ignore it. He sensed that behind his mother's recent silence, behind the discreet calls and the way she avoided his gaze, there was something immense, something deep, something he had never noticed before. That feeling made it impossible for him to keep treating everything as normal. From that moment on, Hung began paying closer attention to details that once seemed insignificant in daily life. He recalled how his mother would evade questions about the past, the unusual pauses during family meals, the moments when she stared into the distance as if lost in thoughts no one could reach. All those things, which he once assumed were simply signs of age or exhaustion, suddenly seemed to link together, forming a nameless anxiety that tightened in his chest. Quietly, Hung began asking questions within himself, even though he did not yet dare to speak them aloud. He followed the signs he had long overlooked, trying to connect the scattered pieces to understand what was truly happening. Curiosity mixed with worry made it impossible for him to remain indifferent, but it also made him hesitate, because he understood that once the door to the truth was opened, nothing might ever be the same again. Hung's cautious steps in this moment, without anyone realizing it, continued the thread from previous episodes, pushing every character closer to a knot none of them were ready to face. Meanwhile, Hoai Ca was gradually pushed into a dilemma she herself had never anticipated. The final days of the year passed slowly, appearing calm on the surface, yet inside her, an undercurrent never stopped rising. Hoai Ca understood all too clearly that the truth could not be hidden forever. No matter how hard she tried to keep it secret, there would come a time when everything would be revealed. What tormented her most was not the truth itself, but the consequences it might bring. Speaking out could hurt the people she loved. Staying silent meant continuing to shoulder a quiet burden, allowing those in her life to live in a peace that was only temporary. Amid the lush green rows of vegetables in the garden, Hoai Ca worked quietly as she did every day. Her hands were familiar with each movement, each slow rhythm, yet her mind was elsewhere entirely. Every sprig of greens, every leaf trembling lightly in the late-year breeze, made her think of the fragility of relationships being protected by silence. Tet was drawing near, carrying the familiar scent of changing seasons, of reunions, and new hopes. But for Hoai Ca, that atmosphere only heightened the inner struggle, because she knew that the closer Tet came, the more urgent the unanswered questions would become. There were moments when Hoai Ca stood still for a long time in the garden, her gaze resting on some undefined distance. She asked herself what she should choose. Should she protect a temporary peace for everyone, letting things continue as if no secrets had ever been buried? Or should she accept the storms ahead, accept the pain that might come, so that everyone could live honestly with their own past? Neither choice was easy, and neither guaranteed that no one would be hurt. That uncertainty left Hoai Ca exhausted, even as she maintained her familiar calm on the outside. Hoai Ca knew that if she spoke out, she might become the one who reopened old wounds, unintentionally shaking relationships that had been built through immense effort and sacrifice. But if she continued to keep the secret, she would have to live with a growing sense of guilt, with mounting remorse as she watched Hung and his mother live in a peace they did not realize was built upon a portion of forgotten truth. That realization left Hoai Ca stuck between two paths, unsure whether to move forward or step back, unsure which choice would cause the least harm. The episode slowly moved toward its conclusion in a quiet yet tense rhythm. There were no grand words, no impulsive actions, only ordinary moments filled with emotions yet to be named. Hung stood in front of his mother's house, motionless, his eyes heavy with thought. He looked into the familiar yard, once tied to simple family memories, but now his heart felt heavier than ever. Unanswered questions repeated in his mind, leaving him unable to move forward or turn back. From a short distance away, Hoai Ca silently watched Hung. She did not step closer, nor did she call out to him. She simply stood there, letting her thoughts tangle within. Seeing Hung's pensive figure, Hoai Ca felt even more clearly the weight of the truth she was holding. She knew that no matter what choice she made, this moment of silence would eventually pass, giving way to unavoidable upheaval. Inside the house behind them, Hung's mother sat alone in the stillness. In her hands was a sheet of paper containing vague information about her lost child, just a few short lines, yet enough to stir her heart. Her eyes lingered on each word, as if trying to etch them into her memory. In that silence, she felt more clearly than ever the conflict within herself, between past and present, between the desire to make amends and the fear of hurting those who were beside her. 3 people, 3 different states of mind, existing within a familiar space yet carrying separate emotional worlds. Hung with his growing suspicions, Hoai Ca with her hesitation and anguish, and Hung's mother with her unrelenting remorse over the past. These 3 emotional paths seemed separate, yet in truth they were slowly converging toward the same point, a truth that could not be avoided, quietly waiting for the moment it would finally be named. Will that secret be revealed during the approaching days of Tet, when everyone gathers together with smiles and wishes that seem whole and complete? In such moments of reunion, when each family meal feels warmer than ever, will the truth have room to exist, or will it continue to be hidden behind everyday conversations and averted glances? Tet is meant to be a time of return, of healing and sharing, yet it is also the moment when things long buried in the past are most likely to resurface, no longer willing to remain still. Hoai Ca stands before the question she has asked herself countless times. Will she continue to choose silence, holding on to the fragile peace of the present and allowing quiet anguish to follow her day after day? Or will she speak out, face reactions she cannot predict, and accept that she may hurt the people she cherishes most? Hoai Ca's silence is not indifference, but the result of deep thought, careful weighing, and love. Yet that very silence is becoming an increasingly heavy choice, leaving her unable to find peace even in the briefest moments. As for Hung, standing before the scattered fragments of his family's past, he begins to sense that what he is about to face may change many things. The truth about his family, about what happened long ago, will it leave him feeling wounded, angry, or filled with an emptiness he cannot name? Hung is accustomed to confronting reality with reason, but matters of family touch the deepest emotional core within him. As the truth gradually comes into view, how will he choose to face it, and will he have the composure to accept everything he is about to learn? These questions hang quietly in the air, unanswered, mirroring the tense yet silent atmosphere surrounding the characters now. No one speaks them aloud, yet everyone senses that the peace of the present is standing at a crossroads. With just one word, one decision, or one moment that can no longer be restrained, everything could change in ways no one expects. Stay tuned for the next episode to follow the new developments of the story, as past and present begin to collide more directly, no longer existing only in silent glances or hidden thoughts. Every choice made at this point carries the weight of emotion, responsibility, and consequence, with the power to disrupt a life that once seemed calm and secure. What has been buried for many years is drawing ever closer to a point of no return, and the journey of facing that truth will open profound shifts in the relationships between the characters, placing them before trials that none of them can avoid.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. bắt đầu làm thôi. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều vì đã theo dõi và ủng hộ cho kênh của mình nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo.